Yeah, welcome, Kabisa. Very important conversations about to happen. Yeah. Right, you're right on time. Of course, it is now the summit o'clock. Each and every Wednesday, 9 p.m., we come alive right here on this particular set to try and bring conversations that matter to you and I right here on this particular program. It is the 23rd day of the month of October. If there's a month that has rushed so fast, I think it is this particular month. Any moment, it could be coming to an end, and of course we'll be counting just 2 more months to close the year of 2024. But that's not the conversation we're going to be having tonight on the program. We have a very serious conversation that I believe is a conversation we must all have. It has to do with the cases of teenage pregnancies, and this is definitely a challenge that we here at the summit believe we must all confront together. If you're seeing me for the first time, hearing my voice for the first time, as always, my name is Eugene Anangwe, and thank you so much for making time. Of course, we are live across digital platforms. You can feel free to join us on our YouTube channel. Please, we want to hear your thoughts on this particular topic tonight. Leave a comment on our YouTube channel. We're live right now. If you go to the RwandaTV YouTube channel, you'll be able to leave a comment right there. On the X platform, it's the hashtag that we're using is the Summit RW. I'll be following that particular hashtag. Please add your feedback and remember to add that particular hashtag, and we'll be able to track those particular feedback. And right here on the program, I have a very able panel. And of course, we are trying to hear, first of all, from the voices of those within the civil society or non-governmental organizations. And of course, we'll be trying to also make sense of these particular numbers. And I know that the data doesn't look so good. We understand that as at 2023, that is just last year, over 22,000 teenage girls delivered. And of course, this was recorded throughout the country. This particular information is on an article that was posted on the New Times, and that was on October 9th, 2024. Of course, records captured by the Rwanda Biomedical Center, RBC, according to that particular article, showed that there were already 10,480 recorded teenage pregnancies in the country in the first 6 months of this particular year. These numbers are not looking good, and of course, we need to try and have a conversation on what do we need to do to roll back these numbers, and that is what we're going to be having right here. Joining me on this set to discuss this is Ange Gaju Mutoni, and of course, she is the Tinyuka project coordinator at RWAMREC. Thank you so much for making time.
Thank you so much.
All right. Also joining us on this particular set is Dr. Olivia Promise Kabatesi. She's the founder and country director of Empower Rwanda. Thank you for making time. Okay. Also with us on the program is Frank Kaitare. He's the country representative of Interpeace. Thank you for making time.
Thank you for having the
program. I want us to just first of all understand from this particular information that I just set the tone with on this particular show. I'll start with you, Ange. Some people somewhere might be saying, you know, you guys are blowing things out of proportion. There is no crisis. Do you feel there's a crisis when we talk about teenage pregnancies right here in Rwanda? Is there a crisis from where you sit?
Yes, thank you for that question. I would say there is a crisis, and it is time for us to recognize that this is a prevalent issue in Rwanda. It is not just a crisis for today, but it's also a crisis for the future generations. As we see teenage pregnancies keep increasing year by year. So it's as a collective, our efforts, we have to join efforts to address this issue, and it's by addressing this issue that we can actually find solutions. Yeah. So I would say yes, it is a crisis.
There's a crisis
in Rwanda, but also in other African countries as well.
Right. Let's start there. Promise, is there a crisis? You feel this is something that there's a lot being done? We don't have to make it a big thing. Do you feel there's a crisis?
Yeah, thank you, Jane. I would just say it's a pandemic.
It's a pandemic.
To me, it's a pandemic because it's beyond just a crisis, because this is something that has persistently been there for the past, when I look at the statistics for the past 5 years, when I look at the statistics in DHS of 2015, looking at DHS 2020, looking at different reports by different ministries, you realize that it is more than just a crisis. It's rather a pandemic that needs to be handled urgently, because it's not only affecting today, but it's affecting even the future of this country. Yeah. If I may specifically talk about Rwanda. Yeah. So to me, we are just like late.
We are late to the...
Yeah, we are late to get it done because looking at the severe effects of this particular issue, you realize that we are losing a lot. And our children are actually going to face it harder going forward. So it needs to be addressed as yesterday.
As yesterday. Frank, I want to read your thoughts. From where you sit at Interpeace, what comes to your mind? What is making you busy within your boardrooms, within your peer discussions on this matter? Shocking? Beyond shocking? Pandemic, as Olive says?
Thank you, Anangwe. During the course of today, many friends sent me messages when they saw my name on this show talking about teen pregnancies. They were asking me, what does peace building have to do with teenage pregnancies? Yeah. And my response, let me say it here, is that teen pregnancy, which is a big issue, I agree with everyone else, has different dimensions of impact. It's impacting education, it's impacting health, it's impacting peace in the homes, it's impacting the development of individuals and the country, and therefore directly affecting peace as well. Yeah. So it's definitely a big issue. It's a big issue that requires everyone, whether you are in social welfare area, whether you are in health, whether you're in peace building, everyone has a role to play. Yeah. And that definitely as Interpeace, we are basically looking at it from especially the social fabric reconstruction. How do you tackle this starting from the family to the society, the attitudes and behaviors, and that's where also how from perspective, for example, of cohesion of families. Its impact, the cohesion at the family level could be a cause or a consequence of this. And
we'll talk a bit about that in the course of this particular program. But I want to ask this, and probably I'll ask you this, and all of you, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Every time we talk about teen pregnancies, we majorly hear the statistics on the number of teens that have gotten impregnated. But very rarely do we hear, because they can't impregnate themselves.
Of course. Yeah.
So let's talk a bit about that. The perpetrators, we do not hear so much of that. And I don't know, maybe it's just me, but I want to hear from yourselves. Ange, for you probably, do you feel that there's been a gap in that sense, and that probably has perpetuated the increase because perpetrators feel, there's nothing that will be done after all, or probably will still get away with it. There's no one who knows that I actually did it, and they'll only know about those who have been affected by this. Let's talk a bit about that aspect of reporting in that sense.
Yes, that is very interesting because at RWAMREC we work to engage men, engage men in this fight for gender equality. Yeah. So I feel like it's time to hold accountable perpetrators, but to also hold accountable the men that needs also to address it. Men needs to be allies in this issue, to address this issue. The teenage pregnancies is not only a women's issue, it's a societal issue. So I feel like, yes, perpetrators get away with it, but also there is this social stigma around pregnancy, early pregnancies of these teenage girls, where they know who did it, but then they also fear, because sometimes we have seen cases where it's in the family, it's people who have raised them, it's people who have been around them, and even like teachers, things like that. So I feel like there is a need to hold these perpetrators accountable, but also engage men at a young age, earlier. Yeah. The boys have a comprehensive sexual education around teenage pregnancies, around sexual reproductive health. Men need to be engaged at an earlier age so that they can also contribute to be allies, but not be bystanders, because we know people know perpetrators, but the problem is how to move forward with that. I have that information, but how do I move forward if it is my friend? How do I address this? So if they're engaged earlier, I think they could contribute to address these issues, but also not be bystanders of that violence.
Right. Olivia, I know that from Empower Rwanda, you deal with supporting even the victims, those who have actually fallen into this space, supporting them, even reintegrating them back to school and all that. But I want to understand, within the next 40 minutes that we have on this particular session, I want us to talk about what do we need to do. If someone somewhere is seated out there, let them grab a notebook and a pen. And from this next minutes that are remaining, they come out with tangible solutions to fixing this particular issue. So it's not a conversation that is going to be coming back again, talking about an increase in these particular numbers. What are those things that you feel could have been done, should have been done, and should be done to be able to fix this?
Yeah, thank you, Jean. First of all, I want to just contribute to what you just asked my colleague about perpetrators.
Perpetrators, yes.
Yes, we have seen a number of media reports talking about teenage pregnancies, and even when you look at the photos they use, you find that they're using the photos of girls carrying babies. But we know there are many perpetrators that have been found guilty of this and have actually been sentenced to some terms in prison. We have GBV offenders registry in prosecution. But for those who access that, can't journalists just go to such institutions and get statistics, at least report about it? So to me, I would say that the cause for all this is victim blaming. So the girls are blamed for whatever happens to them. When a girl conceives, she's actually blamed for that pregnancy, regardless of how she got it. So I can imagine, we carried out a research in Empower Rwanda. Empower Rwanda supports over 4,000 teenage moms across the eastern province. So, but we carried out a research in 2021 in September, looking at the causes and effects of teenage pregnancies. So among the key persons we interviewed, perpetrators in Nyagatare prison. So when I went to meet with them, the reasons they gave me, really, you realize that they are just I mean, so they are all based on victim blame.
What are some of those reasons they give you?
This is what I wanted to bring out. Some of them said that it's the immorality among girls. So I just can't imagine a girl under 14 being immoral to that extent that would entice a 40-year man to
impregnate them.
This is it. Secondly, they would say they were in love relationship. How do you be in a relationship with a 15-year-old girl, for God's sake? I mean, they do this because they provide for them. And realize that one of the leading causes of teenage pregnancy is poverty. Most of these girls come from poor or economically challenging backgrounds. But these guys take that advantage of supporting these young girls and end up abusing them sexually. In that research, we found out that 68% of the 65% of the causes, the leading causes was defilement. So when you look at 68% of this kind of pandemic, I call it a pandemic because it has finished literally young girls. So when you look at that highest percentage and still say that girls are to be accountable for that, then you realize that the issue is not going to end. So I would come back to the question you asked. What do we do? First of all, let's take this as an issue. I mean, it's not a girl's issue, first of all. It's not a girl's issue. It's something that has to be blamed on the perpetrator, not the victim. Teen, I mean, we're talking about under 18. These are children. For God's sake, they don't consent in any way. So, I mean, should be an issue of perpetrators and should be handled from that perspective. Secondly, it has to be a family matter. It has a family matter. Because we have seen most of the girls are evicted by their parents. They are thrown out of their families. They are surviving on their own. And these men are continuing to thrive in their communities. So, but these parents are the ones that have primary responsibility of supporting this girl to access justice. To help this girl open up and talk about the perpetrator. But this girl will not talk about the perpetrator when she's still depending on her. She's still depending on the perpetrator to survive. She has no family support. She will keep quiet because she needs, for instance, mutuelle de santé, 3K per year. She needs college for her baby. She needs to survive regardless. So she will accept to continuously be abused, but survive. You got what I mean? So it has to be a family issue. And then it has also to be a responsibility of government entities in charge. I know they have done a lot. The government had put in place laws, very good laws protecting women's rights. But let's enforce them.
So enforcement, you feel?
Yes, I feel there has to be enforcement up to the grassroots. So another thing that I want to suggest is that let us listen to these girls without judging, because you feel that even when these girls go to report, because we live with them most of the time.
Yeah, yeah.
So what they do, what they report as one of the hindrances to reporting these cases is that even when they go to report, they feel blamed. They don't feel listened to. They end up being stigmatized, and they are called all sorts of bad names because they are bad girls, as they are quoted.
Yeah.
So from that, they'll say, even when I go to report, it won't make sense to anyone. Yeah. So I would rather reserve that and survive my own troubles.
Silence. Yeah.
So they die in silence.
Yeah. We'll come back to that. I want to hear what Frank, because Frank, you know, your core contribution to fixing the problem is through looking at the structure of the family. And Olivia says that's where we have a challenge. Because if the family unit is weak in terms of giving the full support to the victims, then it contributes to the problem becoming even more. Where are we failing as a family in that sense, and what should be done to fix it at that level? Because you know, long ago people would say, you know, it's our culture, we cannot report relatives, we cannot report so-and-so, we'll put shame to the family and all that. So what happens then? What happens?
So there are different things that at the family level can be done to at least mitigate this problem. I will start with the parenting styles. Different styles of parenting naturally lead to different life outcomes.
Explain.
For children. So let me give you an example. We have different types of styles of parenting. I'll focus on three. There's a parenting style that is authoritarian. So children must follow instructions without questioning. No role in decision making, including on their own lives. You have permissive parenting. So these are parents who are really loving, permissive for in every sense.
Whatever you want, you get it.
You get, but of course there also you lack a sense of direction and the parent figure. And then there's something in between that's sometimes confused to be authoritarian, but it's authoritative parenting. The authoritative parenting is the one that has a degree of warmth, it's loving, but it's firm on expectations and values and what children. That style is the one that balances being too authoritarian to a degree that the child does not have a sense of personal responsibility. This empowers teenagers, whether girls or boys, to actually feel they can be easily manipulated because they are not used to questioning. They might also, that style of parenting makes children have unanswered questions that they might go to seek outside the household. And the people they go to seek answers from might take advantage. So the authoritative one, the one that is loving, respectful, because children also, we must understand that also they must be respected.
Yeah.
The one that gives children room to ask questions and make decisions is the one that I think, as a parent myself, I try the best I can to practice it. It's not... Parenting is every family has its way of managing its affairs. Yeah. But in general, I think a homestead where there is room for parents and children to discuss even difficult topics, to give guidance, that's where most of the time we fail. And I think that's where we need to fix it. The other part that we recently conducted a study about the teen pregnancy and the mental impact. Either is the psychosocial problems as a cause or a consequence of pregnancy, and we found that 59% of teen girls who have given birth between ages of 15 and 17, in the interviews, they actually said, we never had room to ask questions at home. So we went to seek for questions outside. And this is the outcome. At the family level, so if a child has unfortunately, conceived and give birth, the solution is not to disown them, to stigmatize your child as the rest of the society. We have society to do that anyway. Yeah. But at least as parents is to help them regain self-esteem. Guide them through how can they recover, how can they go back to become productive members of society. And as a society, sometimes like Olivia said, the family might not have the capacity, financial capacity, for example, to support this child to regain that independence. Initiatives such as those of civil society and government should focus on livelihoods, income-generating activities that can help that child become less vulnerable. Otherwise, if they continue to be vulnerable, they're going to have the second child where they're still teens and the third. And so that's why, for me, those three things, the parenting style, the self-esteem, focusing on psychosocial support, and the livelihood.
And the livelihood. Yeah. But listening to all the three of you, I want to understand what you feel, because from an analytical perspective, numbers don't lie.
Yeah.
If these numbers are now, I mean, we just read earlier on that within the first 4 months, actually 6 months of this year, more than 10,000 cases were reported. In the previous years, the number was not 22,000 teenage deliveries. It was less than that. But 2023, the numbers went up. So something is not working.
Yeah.
Out of the things you guys are telling me here, something is not working.
Yes.
So what is it that is not working? What do we need to do if we were to go back to the drawing board? Because we can't do the same things and expect different results.
Correct.
Yeah.
What do you think?
What I think is, I really like what Dr. Olivia said about victim blaming. We need to shift the blame. The blame needs to go to the perpetrators, but also I feel like it is important to really have these discussions within families dynamic in Rwanda, in the Rwandan context. Talking about sexuality is a taboo.
So when are we waiting to start those conversations?
So we need to start this conversation right now, because right now is when we need to take action. Actually, I understand that the older generations, it's a really difficult thing to do, but at least at school where the kids spend most of their times, we need to update the comprehensive sexual education, because we have all been in school and it's still a taboo. I'm saying, talking about safe sex, talking about what is sexuality, talking about that. For example, there is so many myths around sexual organs. For example, I have heard on the field, as we work on the field, I've heard like some people say that when you do first time sexual intercourse, you don't become pregnant, which is a complete lie. So I feel like there is a need to update the sexual education in the schools, but also because what we learn on the sexual intercourses or even sexual education is among peers. So it needs to be brought in the family. Also, I know the Rwandan government has done a lot. We have youth centers where now adolescents can go search for seek for services. But I feel like it needs to be updated. It needs to be empowered, as Olivia said. Like, if I go to seek those services, it needs to be youth-friendly. It needs to be non-judgmental, non-stigmatizing. So I feel like we need to keep up those discussions, but also now we are in the digital world. Talk about it online. Talk about not stigmatizing the teenagers, but talking about the sexual education in the open, but also engaging men in those conversations. Like, what do they think? The fathers, positive fatherhood is a really good practice, because we learn from our parents. If we discuss earlier on, I think it can reduce significantly the rates of early pregnancies.
Dr. Olivia, I think I want to also hear your take on this, because if you do a self-assessment of what is being done from a civil society perspective, non-governmental organizations perspective, in trying to mitigate or curb these numbers from going up and still supporting those who find themselves as victims, where do you see a gap? Where do you see failures? Where do you see that you can be able to say, look, colleagues, we are not doing well here, as people who are also supporting government and society at large in fixing and avoiding these issues? What are those areas that you would point out?
Yeah, first of all, I want to talk about the victim blaming part of it. It has actually increased the abuse for these girls. And I want to suggest that we should look at this as not a girl's matter, first of all. It's not a woman's, because I've seen even women, mothers, suffering because their daughters have become pregnant, as if it's them that impregnated them. So you realize that it has even become a cause of some divorces or family conflicts. Because a girl has gotten pregnant, the mother is to blame because she did not nurture this girl very well. But remember, this girl was defiled. And this mother did not contribute to her defilement. So let's shift the blame from women collectively. That is one. Two, let us take comprehensive sexuality education to primary level. Because we realize that among the teen girls that we interviewed in that survey that I just mentioned, 57.4% were just primary school dropouts. So you can imagine if we have such a high number at primary level, and these are girls that lack this kind of sexual information. They lack sexual education. They do not even talk about this. Some families don't talk about this. Because myself, growing up, I knew that this sex was for the married people. And that is what we believed in. What if I don't get married? Will I die without having sex? I mean, this is my right. So people need to be told the truth. And they should also be given options. Let us avail contraceptives to the teenagers. I mean, we have to admit that today, I mean, the youth that we have are sexually active. So let's admit that fact and avail contraceptives to them. I want to thank RBC that has at least integrated youth among community health workers. Because initially you would find that these young girls or young boys could not go to their mother's age mates to seek for such services. At least they can go to the youth and be able to get such services. But again, let us avail these services. We have youth centers, we have youth corners at health centers. Let us get them equipped. And let's have staff that are entirely responsible to provide such services. So what I want to mention is also that let's have sexuality education for youth out of school. Because we have very many that are out of school who are also part of perpetrators. So where do they get this information? We have many good local government structures like umugoroba w'umuryango, like inteko z'abaturage, like umuganda. Let's have this information shared during such platforms. Let us raise awareness about the laws.
So
for instance, we have safe abortion law.
Who's supposed to raise this conversation?
It is civil society and government. So, I mean, we are partners in this. It has to be done collective, and let the media as well be part of this, because you guys have a voice that can be heard and trusted more than Olivia would come and speak. Because when you're on the radio, on TV, talking about an issue, everyone will listen and they will take it seriously.
I feel that is not happening.
It's not happening. So there's a gap, there's a disconnection. You find that, okay, society is doing this, government has put in place laws, but can we support government in disseminating these kind of laws? For instance, we have safe abortion law. How many people know about it? So, and this would be one of the preventive measures of this teen pregnancy. I really have to appreciate the government when it comes to legal framework. It has done a lot. But can civil society, the media, talk about this? Can we talk about this during all community dialogues that we usually have? And I want also to mention that civil society organizations, even when you're dealing with education, whether you're in agriculture, this issue has to be
It's cross-cutting.
It's cross-cutting. So everyone should have a role to play, especially in that. As we're designing our programs, as we're designing our projects, can we have that component of family building? Because it's from the family that we're able to implement all other programs.
Something you said, and I want to hear from Frank on two things that you mentioned that could be able to help, reduce these cases or actually mitigate or avoid these particular cases. Frank, Dr. Olivia said that we need to avail contraceptives. And let's face it, no hiding our heads in the sand. This age group is sexually active, and so she suggests to avoid teen pregnancies, let's avail these contraceptives. And I want to hear your thoughts in terms of this. Do you think this would help to actually deal with this challenge? Is this something that you'd say, look, we are all coming together, civil society organizations, we want to rush or push a campaign to ensure that if these are done, then we'll reduce these particular cases? Secondly, she speaks about also availing safe abortion options for these pregnant teens. How does that sit with you? Is it something you'd advocate for?
Well, let me start with the second, the safe abortion. I think the mere fact that somebody has conceived in a situation where they have no capacity to consent and giving birth might be detrimental to their future, then I think they should have that choice. But of course, you go for abortion because you've already conceived.
And we want to avoid the conception.
Yeah, we want to avoid the conception. So the damage is already done. Maybe you can mitigate it by not having the burden of raising a baby. But the conception has already taken place. So the prevention part for me is, so the contraceptives, that's, as we all know, it's a very controversial topic. It has been controversial in different circles among policymakers and parents. There are some instances where I would feel, so for example, people have been pushing for contraceptives in schools, but from what age? Some people will say the more you avail it, the more you're campaigning for people to actually become sexually active. So it's a very delicate debate. But I feel there are some structures that awareness is not, that could be used for awareness to even prevent. The first, we need to reduce the numbers of people who are vulnerable to pregnancy. We have, at the local level, at the village level, we have parents' evenings. What kind of discussions take place there? When parents meet, is this a topic they talk about? Because that's where you can start to say, at the community level, people are actually aware and they're trying to do something at their family. We have the village councils. What do they talk about? If we agree that this is a big problem for society, for the nation, from the village to national level, what are these structures? Are these structures being used to actually create awareness among parents, empower parents to talk about these topics? We also must admit that parents need empowerment to talk about these difficult topics with their children. It's not, most parents grow up, as everyone here has said, knowing this is a taboo. It's not, they don't know how to approach it. The topic. So the civil society, government, one of the things we all need to do is to also think about empowering the people who have a primary responsibility for the children, or the parent. How can they start a conversation like this in a way that is not damaging, in a way that is comfortable?
If there's a parent watching you now, and they have that challenge, what tip do you give them? How do they approach it? The tip is, for me, I think when I started, I talked about giving room to children to ask curious questions. Allow them to be curious. And they can start asking questions that are not about sex. But the more you give them room to ask you and engage them, eventually they might hear something from the peers. They should feel free to actually ask you those questions. And you have to create that environment. And once you create that environment, then you are more likely to prevent or to help your child to actually make the right decisions. Okay. Ange, I want to read your thoughts. I mean, as we welcome, feedback from viewers, I know you've been sending your comments. I can see on the YouTube channel, I can see George's, is there already, Muzika Live, I think that's your YouTube channel name. I see Damsel, and I'll be reading that feedback in just a short while, but I want you to please share your thoughts. What do we need to do? Because we already know that the situation is not good in terms of the numbers. One pregnant teenager is already bad enough. And so what do we need to do? We already know that it is not a good situation, but so I'm looking for solutions. In the remaining few minutes that we have, I would love to hear your thoughts. How do we solve this? How do we fix this? What are the things that need to be done? I've seen a comment saying that just put some of these old perverts in jail, name and shame them, plus better sex education. People here are, for some, very prude and will not talk about this with their kids. This is from Georges, who says that. What do you think needs to be done to fix this? I'll come back to you, Ange. What have we not done that you feel if we did it, we'll be able to start dealing with fast reducing these numbers from even happening? Before we start talking about how do we now deal with those who found themselves in this space?
I feel like the legal framework is well installed. I will join Frank in this. I feel like we need to create safe spaces for young people to express themselves, to have the freedom to ask curious questions about contraception, about sexual and sexual reproductive health questions. And also, as Olivia said, I'll also join her, implement those programs from primary schools, because we have seen cases where we have girls who get pregnant at 10 years old, 11 years old. Those are girls who are in primary school. So we need to start by education first, and second, create those safe spaces, empower the parents, educate the parents about how this is not a taboo anymore, because as we have seen, the youth are sexually active, but they have to know a safe way to practice those sexual practices. And also, we have to shift the blame. As I've said before, this is not a blame for the teenage girls, and we have also to recognize that a girl who is under 18 does not have a consent. So in most cases they have been raped, and it has to be brought forward. They have to know where to go, have services that support them, know where to report in case of those sexual assault, sexual I would say rape, because sometimes you don't even know that you have been raped, because of course you said it's a transaction, I've accepted, but then if you're under 18, it's not consent. There's no consent, so it's rape. You have to go to report it, but also have a support system. The community has to be a supportive environment for these young girls, you know. So I would say sexual education have to be improved in that sense. And also have safe spaces for young people to express themselves and to ask questions and to be supported, and also the government to implement this sexual education in the primary schools. Right.
Dr. Olivier, you've worked, like you said, over 4,000 teen moms within your organization, and I know you spend a lot of time listening to their gruesome stories and the pain they've had to go through. You see them when you walk into your center, looking at them in that sense. If you reflect what you see and the stories you hear from them against the legal measures that have been put in place in dealing with perpetrators, what recommendation would you make? Is the law lenient that people feel we can get away with this? What would you recommend? Do we need to have more tougher legal measures against perpetrators? In your mind, what runs in your mind when you see them from a perspective of punishment for the perpetrators?
Yeah, thank you. I think the legal framework is very good. I would say 25 years in jail is not a simple thing. And I don't think anyone would just wish to have it. But what is lacking in this case is the efforts that are put in searching for these perpetrators. That is one. Because I'll just give an example. If someone committed another crime, it doesn't take long before they get to that person. But when it is just this case, because men feel they own women's bodies, and because it is this girl that, you know, provoked him. I remember I was in some WhatsApp group today when I mentioned about this talk show, and they were telling us, this is a terminology that is used to blame girls being provocative to men. So if you consider me to be provocative at 14, 15 years,
you have a problem in there.
You have already a problem. Then look at the family and some local leaders actually who side with perpetrators. They negotiate. I would say majorly parents, because we work from local communities. You find that a girl will tell you that my father negotiated with the guy or a man, a neighbor, because most of them are neighbors, some are relatives, others are just workers in the homes. So they try to negotiate. Maybe I'll give you 50,000, maybe I'll give you a goat, maybe I'll give you a cow. And they feel they can negotiate it and end it there.
That happens.
It happens. Parents negotiate. So why would you really negotiate over my body that is going to face all the terrible effects? By the way, it's not even being pregnant. I can even get infected. These guys are infected. These little babies are infected. They have babies that are sick. Just imagine all those challenges coupled with early parenting challenges. How is this girl surviving? So if as a parent, you're siding with a perpetrator, then this is not going to end. So let parents stop this. And let the law take its course. Let us support the victims to report these cases so that perpetrators are held accountable. Secondly, I want to mention that being abused or becoming, actually, like Frank said, these girls are likely to become more pregnant, even going forward. They're going to have many babies going forward because they are probably looking at how to survive with their first babies. So let us support these girls to go back to school. Let us give holistic support to the victims to avoid them becoming victims again. You know, that kind of continuous abuse is going to end only when we can support victims to go back to school, but go back to their families, get them integrated, get the support their babies, help them to get their babies registered, let their babies also enjoy their rights, talk to the families of perpetrators to take care of these babies. I mean, this is, like you said, the girls don't impregnate themselves. So the family of the perpetrator, including the perpetrator, have a responsibility to take care of this baby. So it shouldn't entirely be a problem of a teen mom. So let us collectively put this as a matter of urgency. And also, when they are reported, we have seen cases where they report them, probably they fail to get evidence, or they even fail to follow up the cases. I want to appreciate some of our partners like Haguruka, Shelter Foundation, that have given us lawyers. So we have lawyers that are based at our empowerment centers that take these cases and represent these girls in courts. Initially, we had no girls reporting. So if we can have more kind of legal aid decentralized, then this is also going to enable these guys report. Because you would find that if they have to go report at the district, and they don't even properly have transport, don't even have any money to move from one place to another.
Even the fear of actually being attacked later.
But if these services are decentralized, if awareness is, if we have actually what we call GBV mobile clinics, held in Ntenkozabatuda, held in Evening of Families, I mean, these parents are going to open up because they feel there's a cost. So when it comes to reporting, they feel, I don't even have that money. I don't want to go to the courts. I don't want to, it's going to cost me. But if civil society, as government partners, can also put more efforts in putting in support for legal aid and get it decentralized and let it be done through GPF mobile clinics so that very many people at grassroots can understand the laws, for instance. Let's do, raise awareness about the existing laws. Raise awareness about these punishments. I am sure some men don't know this. If they knew, they wouldn't really play with this kind of thing. So they need to know that you can even be sentenced to life imprisonment. If, for instance, you impregnated a girl and actually infected her with HIV, for instance, it's life imprisonment. So if they got to know that this really happens, I am sure they would fear. And if parents are supportive and local government, that's like we search for other criminals. Let us make it a matter of urgency. And men should also know that women's bodies do not belong to them. They are their own bodies. I have seen cases where, for instance, in families, family planning for even married people, it is determined by a man. I mean, for God's sake, it's my body that carries these babies every year. But a woman will not say, I mean, if I tell him that I want 3 kids or 2 kids, he could probably go to another woman. He threatens to go to another woman to have more kids. I mean, this shouldn't be a threat.
That's right.
So women's bodies should be respected. And women should take charge to decide on what happens to their bodies.
That's a conversation we'll actually take up on another level. Let's talk a bit about this teen moms. Frank, you've heard the ladies speak very passionately about where they see gaps. And I'm still going to ask you the same question as Dr. Olivia and of course Tony here, especially on the issue of the punitive measures. Is that where we see, people take it lightly because nothing will happen, the families will protect me, and all those kind of things. So if we are to look at it from that angle, what do we do then that will be different, or what should be done that would make it now different from people seeing it as a light thing and feeling I can always get away with this?
Of course, what Dr. Divya said is we see it, we observe it at the community level, that those cases of people escaping justice because parents haven't reported or the victim hasn't, those cases are there. But I think it all starts with where we place emphasis. Because when a teen becomes pregnant, we've said it already here this evening, people jump to judge the child rather than looking at the gravity of what is before them. And the parents need, first of all, to understand, I'm sure parents do understand the gravity of the issue.
Yeah.
But they understand it from, they tend to take it from the point of view of the behavior of a child.
Yeah.
And it should be the other way around. It should be twisted to say the behavior of a perpetrator. And that's where this country is, like in Rwanda, we know from a fact that the country has dealt with so many challenges.
Yeah.
Currently, let me give you an example, as Interpeace and many others, we are into the work of rehabilitating people that have committed such serious crimes as genocide. We have projects aiming at rehabilitating and reintegrating them in society.
Yeah.
People who have committed that gravity of... how is it difficult to actually, a society that is able to handle that kind of situation, how can it be difficult to accept a child who has been unlucky to be abused, and we, as a society, we basically condemn them to perpetual stigma. If we are a society that even agrees to rehabilitate and integrate people who have committed atrocities.
Yeah.
And I think that's where the mindset needs to start.
Yeah.
It's also where the mindset needs to start in terms of understanding that whether the child's behavior from a parent point of view contributed to this or not, the starting point is that this is a child. And I think that's where the society, the local government, I'm sure the law enforcement agencies are doing their best, but most of the time it's the society that is not giving evidence.
Right.
And I think that's where
the cases just collapse like that. I'm going to come to you, Gaju, but I want to read some feedback again. I have Irafasha Ejid who says, we are following you. Thank you so much for being with that. Andrew Musemakweli is saying, promote positive parenting. Create safe spaces for teens, boys and girls. Update and make sexual and reproductive health youth friendly and accessible. I think this is what he proposes that will be able to help. Tony Asu says, sex education needs to start at an early age, both at home and in school. It should not just be about protecting the girl child, but more of educating the boy child. I think this is now also flipping it on that sense. Heza Hero is saying, I like the points Olivia is making. I also believe the power of change relies in the hands of the family, but is authoritative parenting style would work. How do we then integrate it in our societies? Authoritative parenting, I think Frank mentioned earlier on these types of parenting in that sense, but how do we now ensure that society is able to embrace that kind of parenting? I have another one who says, an Indian man was put in prison some years ago. After a few weeks, he was set free and left to go with his family in the UK. And the message from this is that men can get away with it. They always feel that they can always get away with it, and that's a very sad situation. Ineza Hero says, education at primary level has been there back 10 years when I was there. But then speaking from the perspective of marginalized communities, the inputs needs to be, needs to change and tailored to their needs. This is something also very important. I also see a challenge to the media. The media can help in creating awareness through making known the clinics, the various safe spaces. That is what I'm seeing right here. Ali says, hello, great conversation. It claps for us. And he says, on my opinion, the parents or family must start to teach about sexual reproductive health in the family. And this is the main root cause of teenage pregnancies. This is what she feels. And I want to understand, from where we sit in this sense, Anj, maybe let me start with you on that note. If someone would be watching us tonight and say, again, same talk, we'll talk about this, next year the numbers will still go up, because it's the same conversations we've had and the numbers have still come up like that. If we're to leave this session tonight, what are the things that you want society to remember in fixing this particular problem? If someone was to ask you, you spent your whole 1 hour at a time when you should be sleeping, relaxing, resting after a long day, and they're asking you, so what did you guys decide on the show? What response would you be able to say? What is it that you want people out there to be able to remember from this conversation tonight? If there's anything we need to remember that will help us to fix this problem.
First of all, I will start by saying that it is not my issue. It is not CSO's issue. It's not the government's issue. It's all of us issues. It is your issue, the viewer, to understand that this is something that we need to take upon action. The actions, as I've all said, come in different forms. But even like in your community where you live, you see how people live. You see these teenage pregnancies, or you hear about this. It's your contribution is necessary to advocate for these teenage matters, but also to find solution collectively.
Yeah.
It's not, we must not think this as someone's issue.
Yeah.
This is a Rwandan society's issue. This is everyone's issue.
Yeah.
So if we take upon this as all of us issues, not only parents, but also all of us, I think this will also, it will help to fix the issue.
I like that it is a collective responsibility.
It is a collective responsibility.
Dr. Olivia, if there's anything you'll pick from this conversation tonight, for someone who feels, again they're talking about it, it will just end like the way it ends.
Actually, mine is just very specific. Let us deal with men. Let us deal with perpetrators. Let's shift efforts to reporting perpetrators rather than team deliveries.
Yeah. Yeah.
And let us also support.
I like that. So the next reporting should be 10,000 perpetrators who are found guilty of impregnating X number of women have been, sentenced to this
kind of period of jail.
Yeah.
I think it will give the feedback to the communities that yes, this is happening.
Yeah.
And also let us handle this as a matter of importance, like an urgent kind of issue.
Yeah.
Just like we handle pandemics. I have had Marburg disease. It's just gone in just less than 2
We're
months.
finishing it.
We're finishing it.
Yeah.
So can we put these efforts in finishing perpetrators? I don't want to mention death sentences, but let's talk about handling them as what the law provides.
Right.
So let us handle this as let's work with the law enforcement organs. Let us provide information. Let's support the victims to report.
Right.
Also, let's strengthen the referral pathways. Let the communities know that when I am defiled, where do I run to?
Right.
Because, for instance, the government has put in place structures like Sang One Stop Center, there's RIB, there's other entities where they can run a list and get
support.
Support. You can get, for instance, a tablet that stops you from conceiving, so like prevents you from acquiring HIV still within 72 hours. So I think people need to know this information. Let us also build capacities of service providers. So let's strengthen the capacities of service providers right from village level. Also, let us educate parents. We shouldn't assume they know these things.
Right.
Because I would start with myself as a parent.
They're telling me you need to go, but I like the passion that you bring in. Yeah, but those points are very, very important.
Yeah.
And I want to now give the remaining minute to Frank, just also to share your thoughts. What do we do if we're to leave this room tonight and someone is asking you, okay, what did you guys decide?
So my answer,
very quickly,
my answer to them would be, I'm sure some of the viewers are parents already, others are future parents.
Yeah.
So my answer to them would be, of course, behavioral change is difficult. It takes time. Yeah. But I think each viewer and each of us needs to think the impact this would have on your nuclear family as a parent, as a potential future parent. And I think that's where they would get the motivation to try. There's so many solutions we've tried to propose. I'm sure there are many other solutions we haven't talked about. Yeah. And so people need to understand the agency and feel that it's actually not a concern of those families that have had that issue, but it's also something that can happen to them.
It can happen to you. Yeah. I like that. It's always the shortest 1 hour.
I know.
I tell people it ends really fast, but this is not the end of this conversation. We must continue talking. We must continue bringing this conversation to the table until we are able to say 0 cases, but also perpetrators have actually served justice. Justice has been served. Thank you very much for making time. And if you've been watching us, I want to say thank you and keep talking, because this is a conversation that has to continue also on our online platforms. The hashtag to use is the Summit RW. We'll see you again next time, same place. As always, my name is Eugene Anangwe. I think we are done here. Let's go. Jane. Thank you very much for your time. Yeah, you did well. Thank you so much, Jane.
waramutse sheri wanjye.
Utekereza ko guhora wiziganya n'umushu ari byo birenze? Natwe niko tubibona. Ubona nta cyakurutira kugaragaza impano yawe. Niko bimeze.
So guys, uyu munsi tugiye kuganira ku gaseke. Agaseke njyewe gafite byinshi. Kamari, ese wowe kakumariye iki? Manudi. Halo Manudi, niba iki uri kunkura mu kazi? Hero mabuja, byahiye kandi noneho bimeze neza cyane. Umva ukuntu biri no guhumura. Umva. Ako Manudi, urumva nakumva ko ibiryo bihumura koko?
Ubona nta cyakurutira umwuga wawe. Erega, natwe niko tubibona. Dushyigikiye buri kimwe agaciro mu buzima bwawe na irekure nshya. Buri wese arahishiwe. Wikwisondeka. Kanda akanyenyeri 150 urwego uhitemo